Sergeant Marcus Tate smirked as Colonel Layla Simmons lay bruised on a rain-soaked Chicago street. Her SUV totaled after his patrol car rammed it. He'd won, or so he thought, cuffing her for resisting, but her calm eyes hid a storm. Oh, couldn't see. A U.S. Army colonel's resolve he'd never fathom. This wasn't the end, just the spark of his unraveling. What started as a routine stop would spiral into a war, one that would shatter his world and echo far beyond this drenched night. How far would her fight take her? Before we dive into this wild tale, let us know where you're watching from, and if you stand for justice against corruption, hit like and subscribe, because tomorrow's explosive episode is one you can't miss. A heavy grey sky loomed over Chicago, casting a dull sheen across the cracked streets of the South Side, as Colonel Layla Simmons guided her black SUV through the gritty maze of brick tenements and flickering streetlights. It was just past 10 at night, and the 42-year-old officer was bone-tired after a marathon briefing at Fort Sheridan, 30 miles north. She'd spent the day in her crisp colonel's uniform, addressing junior officers on urban combat tactics. But now she wore a black leather jacket over a charcoal turtleneck paired with tailored slacks. Her uniform, complete with its polished insignia and rows of ribbons, lay folded neatly in a duffel bag in the trunk. The hum of her tires against the uneven pavement was a steady drumbeat, a rare moment of calm after hours of sharp focus. She adjusted the rearview mirror, her dark eyes scanning the road ahead, when a sudden flash of red and blue pierced the gloom behind her. Layla's brows furrowed. She hadn't been speeding, hadn't swerved, hadn't even rolled through a stop sign. Her hands tightened briefly on the wheel before relaxing, years of military discipline kicking in. She flicked on her blinker and eased the SUV onto the shoulder, the gravel crunching beneath her tires as she came to a stop under a flickering sodium lamp. In her mirror, she watched a patrol car pull up, its headlights glaring like predator eyes. A figure stepped out, boots grinding against the loose stones, and approached her window with a swagger that set her nerves on edge. Sergeant Marcus Tate was a broad-shouldered man in his late 30s, his buzz cut sharp under his cap, his pale face etched with a permanent scowl. His badge gleamed faintly in the dim light, but it was the glint in his narrow eyes that caught her attention. A look she'd seen too many times before, one that sized her up and found her wanting based on nothing more than the color of her skin. He tapped her window with his knuckles, the sound sharp and impatient. Layla lowered it with a smooth press of the button, keeping her movements deliberate, her hands visible on the wheel. Tate leaned in slightly, his breath fogging in the chilly air, and fixed her with a stare that oozed contempt. "License and registration," he barked, his voice clipped and hard like he was already halfway through an argument she hadn't started. Layla reached for her wallet in the center console, her fingers brushing the cool leather as she pulled out her driver's license. She handed it over with her registration, her tone steady as she spoke. "Is there a problem, officer?" Tate snatched the documents without a word, barely glancing at them before flicking his gaze back to her. His eyes roamed her face, then dropped to her hands, lingering as if expecting her to twitch to give him an excuse. "Step out of the vehicle," he ordered, straightening up, his hand resting casually on his holster. Layla's grip tightened on the steering wheel for a fraction of a second, a ripple of irritation breaking her calm. "Excuse me," she said, her voice firm but measured. Tate's lips curled into a smirk, the kind that didn't belong on a man enforcing the law, the kind that screamed he was enjoying this too much. "Step out of the vehicle," he repeated, slower this time, each word dripping with a challenge, daring her to push back. Layla exhaled through her nose, her mind racing through her options. She knew the drill, had trained soldiers to stay, cool under worse pressure than this, but something gnawed at her gut. There was no reason for this stop. No traffic violation, no suspicious activity, nothing but her presence in this neighborhood, a black woman driving alone at night. "May I ask why I'm being stopped?" she pressed, keeping her hands in plain sight. "I wasn't speeding, I wasn't swerving, and I'm well within my lane. What exactly is the reason for this?" Tate's smirk widened, his teeth flashing briefly in the dim light. "Suspicious activity," he said, the words rolling off his tongue like a rehearsed lie. "Step out now." Layla's jaw tightened, But she'd seen this script play out before, knew the game he was running. She'd faced men like him in every corner of her life, from basic training to battlefield command, men who saw her skin and assumed they could bend her to their will. She also knew better than to escalate this on a deserted street with no witnesses, no backup, just her and this cup itching for a fight. With a slow, controlled breath, she pushed the door open and stepped out, her boots hitting the gravel with a soft crunch. She stood tall, 5 feet 9 inches of lean muscle honed by years of service, her hands loose at her sides, but visible. Tate circled her SUV like a vulture, peering through the windows, his flashlight beam slicing through the darkness. He stopped at the driver's side, then turned back to her, his smirk gone, replaced by a hard glint. "Where you headed?" he asked, crossing his arms over his chest. "Home," Layla answered, her voice even. "I just left a military function at Fort Sheridan." His eyes narrowed, a flicker of disbelief crossing his face before he let out a dry chuckle. "Military, huh? And what exactly are you claiming to be?" Layla lifted her chin, meeting his gaze without flinching. "I'm Colonel Layla Simmons, United States Army." The words hung in the air, crisp and unyielding, but Tate's reaction was immediate, a scoff bursting from his throat like she'd told him a bad joke. He looked her over again, slower this time, taking in her leather jacket, her civilian clothes, as if they disproved everything she'd just said. "Oh, really, Colonel?" he drawled, dragging the word out, the skepticism thick enough to choke on. "You sure about that?" Layla's jaw clenched, but her voice stayed steady. "Yes." He laughed again, a short, harsh sound that grated against the quiet night. "And where's your military ID, Colonel?" he asked, stepping closer, his tone mocking. Layla reached into her jacket pocket, her movements deliberate, but her fingers found nothing. Her brows furrowed slightly as she patted the other side, then pulled out her wallet again, flipping through it. Empty. Her mind raced, retracing her steps. She always carried her ID, a habit drilled into her since her first day in uniform. Then it hit her, the briefing at Fort Sheridan, changing into civilian clothes in the locker room, stashing her uniform in the duffel bag. The ID was still in, her uniform pocket 30 miles away. She met Tate's gaze, unflinching. "I don't have my military ID on me right now," she said. "It's in my uniform, secured in my trunk." Tate's smirk grew, his eyes lighting up with triumph. "Uh-huh," he cut in, his voice smug. "How convenient." He turned her license over in his hand, tapping it against his palm like a prize. "No veteran status here either. Funny, huh? A whole colonel like you, no proof." Layla kept her face neutral, refusing to let him see the frustration bubbling beneath her skin. "This is my vehicle," she said. "My registration's in the glove compartment. You're welcome to check it." Tate's grin sharpened. "Oh, I'll be checking more than that," he said, already stepping past her toward the SUV. She turned sharply, her voice cutting through the air. "You don't have probable cause to search my vehicle." His smirk deepened, unfazed. "Suspicious?" "Behavior's enough for me," he shot back, his tone dripping with condescension. "And I gotta say you're acting real nervous, ma'am." The way he said ma'am twisted the word into an insult, a jab at her race, her gender, her very existence in his presence. Layla clenched her jaw, her pulse quickening, but she held her ground. She'd seen men like him before, cops who thought their badge was a free pass to harass, to dominate, especially people who looked like her. She knew she could argue, could escalate, but she also knew how that ended on a dark street with a man like Tate. He yanked open the driver's door and started rifling through the center console, tossing her phone charger and a pack of gum onto the seat like trash. Then he popped the glove compartment, pulling out her registration and a stack of napkins, letting them flutter to the wet pavement. His flashlight swept over the interior, searching for anything he could pin on her. Layla stood a few feet away, her hands still visible, her breath steady despite the anger coiling in her chest. Tate glanced back at her, his eyes gleaming with malice. "Got yourself a little operation running here, huh?" he muttered, shoving his hand under the passenger seat. "Smuggling something, maybe?" Layla's voice was ice. "You're crossing a line." Tate barely spared her a glance, his fingers digging into the upholstery. "Lady, I don't see a line," he said, yanking open the passenger door and tearing into the compartments there. He flipped open her duffel bag, pulling out her neatly folded uniform, the colonel's insignia catching the light for a split second before he tossed it aside. Layla's fists clenched at her sides, her nails digging into her palms as he trampled. Her service, her pride under his muddy boots. He stood up, turning to her with a sneer. "No ID, no proof, just a lot of talk," he said, stepping closer, his bulk looming over her. "Let's see how tough you are now." Without warning, he shoved her hard against the side of the SUV, her shoulder slamming into the metal with a dull thud. Pain flared, but Layla didn't flinch, didn't cry out. She straightened, her eyes locked on his, calm and unyielding, a storm brewing behind them. Tate's smirk faltered for a heartbeat, unsettled by her silence, her strength. He grabbed her arm, twisting it behind her back, his grip bruising. "Suspicious activity just turned into resisting," he growled, his breath hot against her. "Here." Layla's mind raced, calculating her next move, knowing this was only the beginning of a fight she hadn't asked for but wouldn't lose. Rain began to drizzle over the south side, a fine mist slicking the pavement, as Colonel Layla Simmons stood pinned against her black SUV, the cold metal biting into her shoulder where Sergeant Marcus Tate had shoved her. His grip on her arm was a vase, twisting it behind her back, his knuckles whitening as he leaned in close, his breath sour with coffee and spite. Her leather jacket creaked under the pressure, but her face remained a mask of steel, eyes locked on the flickering streetlight. Ahead, refusing to give him the reaction he craved. Tate's sneer was a jagged edge, his voice low and venomous. "You're gonna learn to respect authority," he hissed, jerking her arm harder, testing her limits. Layla's pulse thrummed, but her training held her steady, a colonel's discipline, forged in chaos far worse than this petty power play. She'd been in tighter spots, faced down enemies with rifles, not just a badge and a bruised ego. With her free hand, she'd already slipped her phone from her pocket during his sloppy search, thumbing the record button discreetly while he'd rifled through her duffel bag. Now, as he twisted her arm, she caught every word, every slur he muttered under his breath, uppity trash slipping out like a confession he didn't know he was making. Layla kept her voice level, a blade wrapped in silk. "You're being recorded, Sergeant. You might want to rethink this." Tate froze for a split second, his eyes darting to her hand. But then he barked a laugh, harsh and hollow. "Nice try," he said, slamming her harder against the SUV, the jolt sending a sharp ache through her ribs. "Ain't nobody gonna care what you got." But Layla wasn't bluffing. She'd also tapped her speed dial while he'd been tossing her uniform onto the wet gravel, connecting to Major Jamal Ellis, her second-in-command at Fort Sheridan. She'd muted her end, letting the call run silently in her pocket, banking. On Ellis to hear the commotion and act fast. Tate, oblivious, kept up his tirade, yanking her arm higher. "You think you're special, huh? Military or not, you're nothing out here." Layla's jaw tightened, but she stayed silent, her mind racing through her next move. She could break his hold, snap his wrist with a twist she'd taught recruits 100 times, but that would give him the resisting excuse he was fishing for. Instead, she played the long game, letting him dig his own grave. Tate stepped back, releasing her arm with a shove that sent her stumbling against the vehicle. She caught herself straightening up, her eyes never leaving his. He smirked, wiping his hands on his uniform like he'd touched something dirty, then pulled out his radio. "Dispatch, this is Tate. Need backup on 79th and Halstead. Got a real mouthy one here resisting orders." His voice was smug, painting her as the villain to his hero. Layla adjusted her jacket, brushing off the dampness, her calm, unshaken. "You're making a mistake," she said, her tone flat but carrying a weight he didn't catch. Tate chuckled, clipping the radio back to his belt. "We'll see who's mistaken when you're in cuffs." Minutes ticked by, the drizzle thickening into a steady patter, soaking her hair and streaking down her face. She stood by the SUV, hands loose at her sides, watching Tate pace like a caged dog, his boots splashing in shallow puddles. Another patrol car rolled up, lights flashing, and Officer Grant, a wiry man with a pinched face, stepped out, nodding to Tate like they'd done this dance before. "What's the trouble?" Grant asked, his eyes sliding over Layla with the same dismissive contempt. "Won't comply," Tate said, jerking his thumb at her. "Claims she's some big-shot colonel. No ID, though. Probably lying." Grant snorted, stepping closer. "Let's see about that." Before Grant could move, Tate's radio crackled to life, the dispatcher's voice cutting through the static. "Unit 12, stand down. You've got a call from Fort Sheridan patched through to the precinct. Major Ellis wants you to release." The woman immediately. "Says she's Colonel Layla Simmons, confirmed active duty." Tate's smirk vanished, his face twisting into a scowl as he snatched the radio. "What? That's bullshit," he snapped, but the dispatcher's tone hardened. "Orders from the chief, Tate. Let her go, now." Grant shifted uncomfortably, glancing between Tate and Layla, who stood still, her expression unreadable, but her eyes glinting with quiet triumph. Tate's hand hovered over the radio, his knuckles white, his chest heaving as he processed the words. He glared at Layla, his lip curling like he'd bitten something sour. "This ain't over," he muttered, low enough that Grant couldn't hear. But Layla caught every syllable. She didn't respond, just stepped back to her SUV, retrieving her tossed belongings from the wet pavement. Her uniform was soaked, the colonel's insignia dulled by mud, but she folded it with care, placing it back in the duffel bag. Tate watched, fists clenched, as she slid into the driver's seat and started the engine. Grant waved her off, muttering something about paperwork, but Tate's stare burned into her through the rearview mirror as she pulled away. The rain streaked her windshield as she drove north toward her apartment in Hyde Park, the city lights blurring into a haze. Her shoulder ached where he'd slammed her, and her arm throbbed from his grip, but a flicker of satisfaction warmed her chest. She dodged the bullet, used her rank like a shield, and walked away. Tate's backup had turned on him, his own, precinct forced to back off. She replayed the recording in her mind, his slurs and threats captured clear as day, a weapon she could wield if he tried again. For now, she thought, it was over. She'd report it to her superiors tomorrow. Let the military handle it. Her fingers relaxed on the wheel, the tension easing as she turned onto her street, the familiar row of brownstones coming into view. But 15 miles away, Tate sat in his patrol car, the rain hammering the roof, his breath fogging the windshield. He'd lost, and it stung worse than anything he'd felt in years. That woman, that black woman, had defied him, humiliated him in front of Grant, in front of dispatch, in front of his own damn chief. He slammed his fist against the dashboard, the plastic creaking under the blow. "Colonel, my ass," he growled, pulling out his phone. He dialed a buddy at the precinct, a desk jockey named Pete, who owed him a favor. "Run a plate for me," he said, rattling off Layla's number from memory. "I want everything you got." Pete came back 10 minutes. Later, his voice hushed. "Marcus, this chick's legit. Colonel Layla Simmons, U.S. Army, stationed at Fort Sheridan. Decorated, too. You sure you want to mess with this?" Tate's stomach twisted, rage boiling over. She was real, and she'd made a fool of him. He hung up without a word, staring out at the rain-slicked street. His suspension was coming, he could feel it, but he wasn't done. Not by a long shot. She thought she'd won, thought her fancy title could protect her. He'd show her what happened. When you crossed Marcus Tate. His fingers drummed on the steering wheel, a plan forming, dark and vicious. She'd pay, and he'd make sure it hurt. Back in her apartment, Layla peeled off her wet jacket, the recording saved to her cloud, a safety net she didn't yet know she'd need. She sank onto her couch, rubbing her bruised shoulder. The night, replaying in her head. She'd outsmarted him, turned his game against him, but as she closed her eyes, a nagging itch lingered, a soldier's instinct whispering that this wasn't the end. Tate's parting glare flashed in her mind, a promise of something worse. She shrugged it off, chalking it up to exhaustion. Tomorrow she'd be safe. Or so she thought. What do you think about Layla's cool-headed defiance? Drop a 1 in the comments if you'd stand your ground against a bully like Tate, and hit that like button if you're rooting for her to crush him. Subscribe now to catch every twist, because this fight's just getting started. Should Tate back off after this smackdown, or is he too far gone to quit? The rain had stopped by morning, leaving Chicago's South Side streets glistening under a weak sun as Colonel Layla Simmons sat in her Hyde Park apartment, nursing a cup of black coffee. Her shoulder still ached from where Sergeant Marcus Tate had slammed her against her SUV the night before, a dull throb pulsing beneath her turtleneck. She'd slept fitfully, the memory of his sneer and the weight of his grip replaying in her dreams, but she'd woken with a soldier's resolve. The recording she'd made, his slurs and threats caught in crisp audio, sat safely uploaded to her cloud, a weapon she'd wield when the time was right. She'd already emailed it to Major Jamal Ellis at Fort Sheridan, along with a terse report. Of the stop, her phone buzzed on the counter, Ellis's name flashing. She answered, her voice steady despite the fatigue clinging to her bones. "Layla, you okay?" Ellis's baritone was tight with concern. "That audio's damning. I've got the base legal team on it. This Tate guy's done." Layla took a sip of coffee, the bitterness grounding her. "I'm fine, Jamal, just bruised. He didn't expect me to push back." Ellis grunted. "Well, he's got a rude awakening coming. I called the precinct chief last night after your call came through. They're suspending him today, pending review. You're clear to drive in and brief us if you're up for it." Layla nodded to herself, setting the mug down. "I'll be there by noon. Thanks for the backup." She hung up, rolling her shoulders to loosen the stiffness, a flicker of satisfaction warming her chest. Tate was down, at least for now. She'd won this round. Across town, Marcus Tate slouched in his cramped apartment near Garfield Park, the blinds drawn tight against the daylight. His patrol car keys dangled uselessly on the counter, his badge tucked away in a drawer like a shameful secret. The call had come an hour ago, the precinct chief's voice cold and final. Suspended, effective immediately, investigation underway. His fist still stung from punching the wall, the plaster cracked where his knuckles had landed. That woman, Layla Simmons, had done this, turned his own department against him with her fancy rank and her calm defiance. He'd spent years building his reputation, bending the rules just enough to keep the streets in line, and she'd shredded it in one night. His phone buzzed with a text from Pete, the desk jockey. "Told you she's legit. Watch your back." Tate's lip curled, rage simmering in his gut. She wouldn't get away with this. He grabbed his laptop, pulling up the precinct's database through a backdoor login Pete had slipped him months ago. His suspension hadn't killed his access yet, and he wasn't about to let it stop him. He typed in Layla's plate number, her name popping up with a military file linked to Fort Sheridan. Colonel Layla Simmons, active duty, decorated for valor in Iraq, a rising star. His stomach twisted, the confirmation stoking his fury. She wasn't just some nobody, she was a threat. A black woman who dared to make him look small. He couldn't touch her legally now, not with the chief breathing down his neck, but there were other ways. He dialed Officer Grant, his voice low and sharp. "You still got that burner gun from the evidence lockup? The one we never logged?" Grant hesitated on the other end, his voice a nervous rasp. "Yeah, why?" Tate's grin was feral. "I need you to plant it. Her SUV is impounded from last night. Slip it in, tie it to her name. Make it look like she's dirty." Grant sucked in a breath. "Marcus, that's insane. She's military. They'll sniff it out." Tate's tone hardened, a steel edge cutting through. "Not if we bury it right. Do it, or I'll tell the chief about that cash you skimmed last month." Grant swore under his breath, but muttered, "Fine, give me an hour." Tate hung up, leaning back in his chair, a dark satisfaction settling in. She'd pay for crossing him. By 11, Layla was back on the road. Her SUV, retrieved from the impound lot after a quick call from Ellis, smoothed the paperwork. She wore a fresh blazer, her duffel bag with her uniform stashed in the trunk again, her military ID now clipped to her belt. The drive to Fort Sheridan was a straight shot up Lake Shore Drive, the water glinting on her right, but her eyes kept flicking to the rearview mirror, that nagging instinct from last night still whispering. She shook it off, focusing on the briefing ahead, when red and blue lights flared behind her again. Her gut sank, a cold dread creeping up her spine. She pulled over near 31st Street, the lake breeze sharp through her cracked window as Officer Grant approached, his pinched face set in a grimace. "License and registration," Grant said, his voice flat, but his eyes avoided hers. Layla handed them over, her tone clipped. "What's this about?" Grant glanced at the documents, then stepped back, pulling his cuffs. "Step out, you're under arrest." Layla's brows shot up, her pulse spiking. "For what?" Grant's jaw tightened, his words stiff like he was reciting a script. "Possession of a stolen firearm. Found it in your vehicle." Layla's mind raced, disbelief crashing into anger. "That's impossible. My SUV was impounded all night. I haven't touched it since." Grant smirked faintly, a flicker of Tate's influence in his eyes. "Tell it to the judge, lady." She stepped out, hands visible, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. "This is a setup, you know it." Grant ignored her, cuffing her wrists with a rough yank, his fingers digging into her bruised arm. She winced, but didn't flinch, her soldier's discipline holding firm. He shoved her toward his patrol car, the metal cuffs biting into her skin as he radioed dispatch. "Got a 10:15 on 31st, suspect in custody." Layla's mind churned as he pushed her into the back seat, the door slamming shut with a hollow thud. A gun. She hadn't carried a personal weapon in years, not since her last deployment. This was Tate, she knew it, his stench all over this frame job. At the precinct, a squat brick building near 47th Street, Grant hauled her inside, past a desk sergeant who barely looked up. She was booked in a blur, fingerprints smudged. Onto a pad, her photo snapped under harsh fluorescent lights. Her military ID, gleaming on her belt, was snatched by a smirking clerk who tossed it onto a pile like it was trash. "Fake," the clerk muttered, loud enough for her to hear. "Nice. Try though." Layla's fists clenched behind her back, but she kept her mouth shut, her eyes scanning the room for weaknesses, exits, anything. She was shoved into a holding cell, the bars clanging shut, the air thick with mildew and despair. She sat on the metal bench, her blazer creased, her mind racing. This wasn't random. Tate had struck back, faster and dirtier than she'd expected. She pulled her phone from her pocket, thankful they hadn't searched her thoroughly, and dialed Tara Brooks, her lawyer, on speed dial. The call connected, Tara's voice sharp and no nonsense. "Layla, what's going on?" Layla kept it brief, her tone clipped. "Arrested, stolen gun in my SUV. It's a plant. I need you here, 51st Precinct." Tara swore softly. "On my way. Don't say a word to anyone." Layla hung up, pocketing the phone as a guard passed, his eyes sliding over her with disinterest. She leaned back against the wall, her bruised shoulder protesting, confidence flickering. Tara would get her out. The truth would surface. She'd beat this just like last night. Meanwhile, Tate sat in a dive bar near the precinct, nursing a beer, his phone buzzing with Grant's update. "It's done. She's locked up." He grinned, a dark gleam in his eyes, but it wasn't enough. He'd humiliated her, sure, but she'd fight back. He knew it. He needed her buried deeper. He called Pete again, his voice a low growl. "Lose her file. Accidentally delete it from the system. I'll owe you." Pete hesitated. "Marcus, this is nuts. If they trace it..." Tate cut him off. "Do it, or you're next." Pete sighed, the line going dead. Tate drained his beer, the alcohol fueling his resolve. She'd stay in that. Sail all night, no record, no bailout. He'd make her feel the weight of his world. Back in the cell, Layla sat in the dim light, the hours dragging as the precinct buzzed beyond the bars. Her phone battery was low, but she trusted Tara to move fast. She replayed the stop, Grant's smirk, the cuffs, piecing it together. Tate wasn't just a rogue cop. He was a coward with a vendetta, and he'd pulled strings to hit her this hard. Her fingers traced the cuff marks on her wrists, a quiet fury building. She'd get out, expose him, end this. But as the clock ticked past midnight, no Tara, no release, a chill settled in. Something was wrong. Tate's shadow loomed larger than she'd thought, and this was only the beginning. The holding cell's fluorescent buzz drilled into Colonel Layla Simmons's skull as she sat on the metal bench, her wrists raw from the cuffs Officer Grant had slapped on her hours ago. The clock on the wall read 6 in the morning, the dim, light filtering through a grimy window, painting the 51st Precinct in shades of grey. Her blazer was creased, her shoulder throbbed from Sergeant Marcus Tate's shove the night before, and her arm bore a fresh bruise from Grant's rough handling. She'd been locked up all night, accused of possessing a stolen gun planted in her impounded SUV, a frame job she knew Tate had orchestrated. Her phone, now dead in her pocket, had gotten one call out to her lawyer, Tara Brooks, before the battery gave up. She trusted Tara to dig her out, but the silence stretched and doubt gnawed at her edges. Footsteps echoed down the hall, sharp and purposeful, breaking the monotony of distant shouts and clanging bars. Tara burst into view, a petite woman in a navy suit, her short hair framing a face tight with fury. She carried a briefcase and a stack of papers, her heels clicking against the concrete. "Layla," she said, her voice a whip crack as the guard unlocked the cell. "You're out. Now!" Layla stood, smoothing her blazer, her soldier's calm masking the relief flooding her chest. "What took so long?" she asked, stepping into the hall as the bars slid shut behind her. Tara's eyes flashed. "They lost your file. Convenient glitch. I had to threaten a federal injunction to get it back." Layla's jaw tightened, Tate's shadow looming in her mind. "He's covering his tracks," she said, following Tara past the desk sergeant, who avoided her gaze. Tara nodded, handing her the release papers as they pushed through the precinct doors into the chilly dawn. "Not well enough, that gun they pinned on you? Serial number ties to their own evidence lockup, logged out 3 days ago under a fake name. Sloppy work." Layla's lips twitched, a flicker of triumph breaking through. "So it's over." Tara's grin was sharp. "For now." I leaned on the chief. "Tate suspended, no pay, pending a full review. You're free and he's screwed." The air outside hit Layla like a lifeline, crisp and clean after the cell's stale reek. She flexed her wrists, the red marks fading, and inhaled deeply, the weight lifting off her shoulders. Tara drove her to the impound lot, where her black SUV waited, the planted gun gone, the paperwork straightened out. Layla slid into the driver's seat, her uniform duffel still in the trunk, her military ID clipped back to her belt. "File a formal complaint," Tara urged, leaning against the window. "Nail him to the wall." Layla nodded, her voice firm. "I will. Fort Sheridan's getting a full report too." Tara tapped the roof. "Good, call me if he blinks." Layla drove off, the sun climbing over Lake Michigan, a fragile peace settling in. At Fort Sheridan, she briefed Major Jamal Ellis and the base legal team in a sterile conference room, her recording of Tate's slurs playing through a speaker. Ellis's face darkened with every word, his fists clenching on the table. "This is a disgrace," he growled as it ended. "We're escalating this to the Pentagon if we have to." The legal officer, a wiry captain named Ruiz, scribbled, "Notes, we'll coordinate with Chicago PD. Suspension's a start, but we want him fired." Layla leaned back, her bruised shoulder protesting, but her spirit lifted. "He's done enough damage," she said. "Let's finish it." Ellis nodded, a rare smile breaking through. "You held your ground, Colonel, proud of you." She left the base at noon, the sun high, believing justice was finally rolling. But 20 miles south, Marcus Tate stewed in his Garfield Park apartment, the blinds still drawn, the air thick with cigarette smoke. His suspension letter lay crumpled on the coffee table, the chief's signature a taunt. He'd lost his badge, his paycheck, his grip on the precinct, all because of Layla Simmons. His phone buzzed, Grant's name flashing. "She's out." Grant said, his voice tight. "Lawyer Spranger. Guns traced back to us. You're fucked, Marcus." Tate's laugh was a jagged rasp. "Not yet. She thinks she's untouchable. We'll see." He hung up, pacing the room, his mind a furnace of rage. She'd turned his own trick against him, humiliated him again. He couldn't let it stand. He grabbed his keys, slipping out to his unmarked sedan, a beat-up grey thing he kept for off-duty hunts. The drive to Hyde Park was a blur, his knuckles white on the wheel, his pulse pounding with a need to strike back. He parked a block from Layla's brownstone, watching her SUV pull into the lot at dusk. She stepped out, duffel slung over her shoulder, her stride confident, unaware. Tate's lip curled, his plan snapping into focus. He waited until night fell, the street quiet, then crept to her vehicle, a switchblade glinting in his hand. He slashed all 4 tires with quick, vicious cuts, the hiss of air loud in the stillness. He pulled a crumpled note from his pocket, scrawled in block letters, "You'll pay, Colonel." He tucked it under the wiper, a promise sealed in ink. Layla found it an hour later, stepping out to grab a late dinner. The flat tires hit her like a punch, the note a cold slap. She stood in the sodium glow of a street lamp, the paper trembling slightly in her hand, not from fear, but from fury. Her eyes scanned the shadows, instinct screaming Tate's name. She'd beaten him twice now, forced his suspension, thought she'd caged him. But this was personal. A line crossed into her world. She pulled out her phone, snapping photos of the damage, the note, her mind already mapping her counterattack. She called Tara, her voice low. "He's not stopping. Slashed my tires, left a threat." Tara's response was immediate. "Document it. I'm filing for a restraining order tomorrow. We'll bury him." Inside her apartment, Layla locked the door, the deadbolt clicking with a heavy finality. She sank onto her couch, the note on the coffee table, its words glaring up at her. Her shoulder ached, her wrist stung, but her resolve hardened. Tate was a rabid dog, snapping at her heels, but she'd faced worse, survived worse. She'd report this to Ellis, push the precinct harder, end him for good. The recording, the gun, now this, it was a mountain of evidence. She closed her eyes, exhaustion tugging at her, but sleep wouldn't come. That itch from last night, the soldier's gut telling her danger wasn't done, flared brighter. She'd won again, forced his hand, but he wasn't finished. Not yet. Across town, Tate slumped in his sedan, parked in an alley, the switchblade, still warm in his pocket. Slashing her tires was a start, a jab to keep her off balance, but it wasn't enough. She'd run to her lawyer, her military buddies, thinking she could outmaneuver him. He smirked, lighting another cigarette, the flame casting shadows on his hollowed face. Suspension didn't mean defeat. He had allies, dirty ones, and a rage that wouldn't quit. She'd feel safe tonight, maybe tomorrow, but he'd hit her. Harder next time. Make her bleed for every second she'd dared to defy him. His fingers flicked the lighter, a spark of something darker igniting. This was war now, and he'd win. Layla's victory felt real, didn't it? Drop a 1 in the comments if you think she's got Tate on the ropes, or a 2 if you reckon he's too stubborn to back down. Smash that like button if you're cheering for her to keep fighting, and subscribe to see how deep this rabbit hole goes. Can Tate really bounce back from this suspension, or is he just digging his own grave with every move? The Chicago night hung heavy with humidity as Colonel Layla Simmons pulled her black SUV into a corner store lot near 63rd Street. The slashed tires replaced that afternoon by a tow service Tara had called. It was past 9, the sky a bruised purple, streetlights buzzing faintly over the cracked asphalt. Her shoulder still ached from Sergeant Marcus Tate's shove 2 nights ago. Her wrists bore faint cuff marks, and the note he'd left, "You'll pay, Colonel," sat like a stone in her gut. She'd reported it to Fort Sheridan and Tara, who'd filed for a restraining order, but the precinct dragged its feet, claiming insufficient evidence. Layla stepped out, her leather jacket zipped against the damp air, her duffel with her uniform locked in the trunk. She needed milk and coffee, a quick stop before holing up in her Hyde Park apartment to plan her next move. Inside, the store smelled of stale cigarettes and bleach, the clerk barely glancing up from his phone as she grabbed her items. She paid, in cash, her soldier's instincts scanning the flickering fluorescent aisles, that itch from the last few nights prickling louder. Tate was out there, suspended but unbound, his threat echoing in her mind. She pushed through the glass door, the bell jangling behind her, and headed back to her SUV, the plastic bag swinging lightly in her hand. The lot was quiet, a stray cat darting across the shadows, but the air felt wrong, too still, too thick. She unlocked her vehicle, tossing the bag onto the passenger seat, when a low rumble broke the silence, tires grinding gravel at the lot's edge. Layla turned, her eyes narrowing as a rusted pickup truck lurched into view, its headlights off, engine growling like a beast. It barreled straight for her, too fast, too deliberate. Her training snapped into gear, muscles coiling as she dove aside, the truck's bumper missing her by inches. She hit the asphalt hard, rolling into a crouch, her palms scraping raw as the vehicle screeched to a stop, blocking her SUV. A man leapt out, a hulking figure in a ski mask, his boots slamming the ground as he charged her. Layla recognized the stance, ex-cop or ex-military, not some random thug. This was Tate's doing, his next punch, and it was aimed to kill. She sprang up, adrenaline flooding her veins, and ducked his first swing, a meaty fist whistling past her ear. He was Vince, a rogue ex-cop she'd never met, but would later learn. Tate had recruited from his dirty network. Vince lunged again, a knife glinting in his hand, its blade catching the streetlight's glow. Layla sidestepped, her breath sharp, and grabbed a tire iron from her open trunk, the cold steel solid in her grip. "Back off," she warned, her voice a low growl, but Vince smirked beneath the mask, his eyes black pits. "Tate says hi," he rasped, confirming her gut, and swung the knife at her throat. Layla parried with the tire iron, metal clanging against metal, sparks flaring in the dark. She twisted, driving the iron into his ribs, a crack echoing as he grunted, stumbling. Back. He was bigger, stronger, but she was faster, trained in close quarters by wars he'd never seen. She swung again, aiming for his knee, but he caught her arm, wrenching it hard. Pain seared through her bruised shoulder, a yelp escaping her lips. As he shoved her against the SUV, the knife slashed down, grazing her jacket, tearing leather but missing flesh. Layla kicked his shin hard and he staggered, giving her a split second to break free. She darted around the truck, putting distance between them, her breath ragged but controlled. Vince recovered, roaring as he charged again, knife raised. Layla ducked under his arm, slamming the tire iron into his wrist, the blade clattering to the pavement. He howled, clutching his hand, but swung a wild punch with his other fist, catching her jaw. Her head snapped back, stars bursting in her vision, but she didn't fall. She spun, driving the iron into his gut, then his temple, a wet thud silencing his snarl. Vince crumpled, mask askew, blood trickling from his head as he hit the ground. Out cold. Layla staggered back, chest heaving, the tire iron slick with sweat in her hand. Her jaw throbbed, her shoulder screamed, and blood oozed from her scraped palms, but she was alive. The truck's engine still idled, a low growl in the quiet lot. She limped to her SUV, grabbing her phone from the passenger seat, the screen cracked but functional. She dialed 911, her voice steady despite the pain. "Assault at 63rd and Halstead. Suspect down. Send help." The dispatcher's questions blurred as she scanned the shadows, expecting Tate himself to emerge, but the lot stayed empty. She hung up, sinking against the vehicle, the milk carton leaking onto the seat from the scuffle. Minutes dragged, the humid air pressing down, no sirens yet. She knew Tate's precinct allies were stalling, giving Vince time to vanish, but he wasn't moving. She tied his wrists with a bungee cord from her trunk, her hands shaking but precise, then searched him. No ID, just a burner phone and a crumpled photo of her, snapped outside her apartment. Tate's work, no doubt. Her gut twisted, fury mixing with exhaustion. She'd report this, bury him deeper, end this nightmare. The distant wail of sirens finally cut through, too late to catch the fight, too late to prove Tate's hand without her word against theirs. She limped home after the cops arrived, a pair of bored officers who took her statement with half-closed eyes. They hauled Vince away, muttering about drunks, ignoring her claim of a targeted hit. Her SUV bore a dent from the truck's ram, the driver's side scratched, but it ran. She drove to Hyde Park, the streets a blur, her mind replaying. The ambush. Tate had gone from harassment to attempted murder, his rage a wildfire she couldn't outrun. She parked, locking the doors, and stumbled into her apartment, the deadbolt slamming shut. Blood stained her jacket, her jaw swelling, but she didn't collapse. She cleaned her wounds, bandaged her hands, and sat on the couch, staring at the wall. Tate watched from a shadowed alley 2 blocks away, his unmarked sedan idling, the stench of gasoline and cigarette smoke clinging to him. He'd sent Vince, expecting a quick job, a broken colonel to teach her place. His phone buzzed, a text from a precinct mole. "She fought him off, he's in custody." Tate's fist slammed the dashboard, pain shooting through his knuckles, but he grinned, a twisted thing. She'd survived, sure, but she was shaken, bleeding. He'd seen her limp away through binoculars, her strength cracking. It wasn't enough to kill her yet, not with Vince caught, but he'd planned bigger, hit harder. She thought she could report this, lean on her rank, her lawyer, her precious justice. He'd show her how wrong she was. Layla pulled out her laptop, the screen's glow harsh against her bruised face. She emailed Ellis the photos of Vince's phone, the torn picture, her statement typed in clipped sentences. "Tate's behind. This," she wrote. "Escalating. Need support." She hit send, then called Tara, her voice hoarse. "Ambushed tonight. Nearly died. Tate's guy." Tara's gasp crackled through. "Jesus, Layla. I'm filing assault charges tomorrow. Stay safe." Layla hung up, leaning back, the tire iron still on the table, streaked with Vince's blood. She'd survived, reported it, thought she could end this with evidence piling up. But as she closed her eyes, that itch flared, sharper now. Tate wasn't done, and neither was she. Across the city, Tate crushed his cigarette under his boot, the ember dying in a puddle. Vince was a loss, a pawn he'd sacrifice, but he had more pieces, darker moves. He'd watched her fight, seen her bleed, and it fueled him. She'd limp into tomorrow thinking she'd won this round, thinking her reports would cage him. He smirked, pulling out his phone, dialing a number he'd kept for emergencies. "Need a favor," he said, voice low. "Bigger this time." The line hummed with promise, a storm brewing she'd never see coming. He'd make her regret every breath she took after crossing him. Dawn broke over Chicago with a pale, watery light as Colonel Layla Simmons sat on her Hyde Park couch, her bruised jaw throbbing from Vince's punch the night before. Her scraped palms were bandaged, her leather jacket torn at the sleeve where his knife had grazed her, and the tire iron she'd used to knock him out lay on the coffee table, its tip crusted with dried blood. The ambush at the corner store had left her shaken but alive, her SUV dented, her body aching, but her resolve unbroken. She'd emailed Major Jamal Ellis the evidence, photos of Vince's burner phone and the crumpled picture of her, along with a detailed report of Tate's latest strike. Her laptop screen glowed with Tara's reply, "Assault charges filed, stay put, we've got this." Layla exhaled, the tension in her chest easing slightly. She'd survived, fought back, and now she'd bury him. Her phone buzzed, a local news alert flashing. "Caught on camera, violent attack at Southside store." She clicked the link, her breath catching as grainy dashcam footage from her SUV filled the screen. It showed the rusted truck ramming her vehicle, Vince charging with his knife, and her swinging the tire iron in a blur of motion. The clerk must have leaked it, or a bystander. She didn't care. The anchor's voice cut in, sharp and urgent. "A shocking assault last night has police scrambling. Sources say the victim, a U.S. Army colonel, fought off her attacker single-handedly." Layla's lips twitched, a flicker of pride cutting through the pain. She forwarded the link to Ellis and Tara, her fingers trembling but steady. This was gold, undeniable proof of Tate's war on her. By noon, the story exploded across Chicago's airwaves, the footage looping on every station, shared 1,000 times online. Protests sparked outside the 51st Precinct, voices chanting, "Justice for the Colonel," signs waving in the crisp fall air. Layla watched from her apartment, the TV muted, her bandaged hands cradling a mug of coffee. Her phone lit up with calls from Fort Sheridan, Ellis's voice booming through. "Layla, this is everywhere. The Pentagon's pissed. We're pushing CPD to fire Tate now." She nodded, her jaw tight. "Good. Vince named him, didn't he?" Ellis's tone darkened. "Yeah, cracked in 10 minutes, said Tate paid him $5,000 to teach you a lesson. He's in lockup, spilling everything." Layla's chest swelled, a third victory blooming. She'd taken down Tate's pawn, turned his attack into a public scandal. Tara called next, her voice electric. "The chief just caved. Tate's fired, effective immediately. No severance, no pension. Vince's confession sealed it." Layla stood pacing her living room, the ache in her shoulder fading under the rush. "And the charges?" Tara laughed, a rare sound. "Assault, conspiracy, attempted murder. They're hunting him now. You're a hero out there, Colonel." Layla glanced out her window, the distant hum of the city carrying a new weight. She'd dismantled Tate's network, or so she thought, and the precinct was scrambling to save face. At Fort Sheridan, Ellis met her that afternoon in a briefing room, the legal team buzzing around a conference table stacked with files. Her dash cam, footage played on a screen, Vince's masked figure lunging, her tire iron flashing. Captain Ruiz, the wiry legal officer, paused it, his eyes sharp. This is airtight. CPD's cooperating, and the FBI's sniffing around Tate's finances. He's done. Ellis clapped her shoulder, gentle but firm. You're a damn legend, Layla. The brass wants you commended for this. She managed a tight smile, her swollen jaw protesting. Just want him gone, Jamal. He nodded, his gaze steady. He will be. Rest up. We've got your back. She drove home under a fading sun, the precinct chief's apology ringing in her ears from a voicemail Tara had forwarded. Colonel Simmons, we regret this incident. Tate's actions don't reflect our values. We're making changes. Empty words, she thought, but the firing was real. Vince's arrest, concrete. Her apartment felt safer now, the deadbolt clicking. As she locked it, the TV still showing crowds cheering her name. She sank onto the couch, her bandaged hands resting in her lap, believing it was over. 3 wins, 3 strikes against Tate, his badge stripped, his pawn caged. She'd report. To the base tomorrow, testify if needed. But tonight she'd rest, the storm finally breaking. But across the city, Marcus Tate crouched in a derelict warehouse near the Calumet River, the air thick with rust and oil. His unmarked sedan was parked outside, hidden under a tarp, his phone dark after ditching it to dodge the manhunt. The firing notice had hit him like a freight train emailed that morning, his career torched in a single paragraph. Vince's arrest followed, the news blasting his name as the mastermind, a disgraced cop turned criminal. He'd lost everything. Badge, pension, respect, all because of Layla Simmons. His hands shook as he lit a cigarette, the flame trembling, rage a live wire in his chest. She'd turned his ambush into her triumph, made him a pariah, but he wasn't finished. He'd called in a favor, a number he'd kept from his days busting dealers, a white supremacist group he'd funneled cash to under the table. 3 men sat across from him now, lean and hard-eyed, tattoos curling up their necks. She's a problem, Tate said, voice low, smoke curling from his lips. Black bitch thinks she can ruin me and walk away. I want her taught. The leader, a gaunt man named Kessler with a shaved head, grinned, teeth yellowed. Heard about your colonel. Got a real mouth on her. What's the play? Tate crushed the cigarette under his boot, his eyes glinting. Break her. Hit her where she lives. Shall pay double. Kessler nodded, cracking his knuckles. Done. She won't see us coming. Tate leaned back, the warehouse shadows swallowing him, a dark satisfaction blooming. She'd feel safe tonight, basking in her victory, the crowds, the news, her precious military shielding her. He'd let her have this moment, let her think she'd won. Then he'd rip it all away, make her bleed for every second she'd defied him. Vince was a loss, his precinct allies scattering. But these men were off the grid, loyal to hate, not law. He'd planned this as a fallback, a nuclear option, and now he'd pull the trigger. She'd never know peace again. Back in Hyde Park, Layla stood at her kitchen counter heating leftovers. The microwaves hum a soft drone. Her phone buzzed with texts from colleagues, praise for her fight, her resilience. She smiled faintly, the swelling in her jaw easing with ibuprofen, her scraped palms itching under the bandages. The TV flickered to a pundit praising her, a symbol of courage against corruption, and she muted it, the noise too much. She ate standing, her eyes drifting to the tire iron, cleaned now, a reminder of her survival. She'd testify against Vince, push the FBI to nail Tate, end this for good. The protests, the firing, the arrests, it all felt like a tide turning, a third win hard-earned. She locked her apartment tight, double-checking the windows, the soldier's itch quieter now, drowned by exhaustion. She showered, the hot water, soothing her aches, and climbed into bed, her uniform duffel safe in the closet. Sleep tugged at her, a rare peace settling as the city buzzed beyond her walls. She'd beaten Tate again, turned his violence into her strength, and tomorrow she'd seal his fate. But as her eyes closed, a faint creak echoed from the street below unnoticed, the first whisper of a storm she couldn't see. Tate's group was moving, their plan set, her victory a mirage about to shatter. Is Layla's grit the real deal? Drop a 1 in the comments if you think she's unstoppable, or a 2 if Tate's still got the upper hand. Hit that like button if you're blown away by her fight back, and subscribe to catch the next insane twist. Can she trust this calm before the storm, or is Tate's silence hiding something worse than she's faced yet? The first light of dawn crept through the blinds of Colonel Layla Simmons's Hyde Park apartment, casting thin golden stripes across her hardwood floor. She'd slept hard, the exhaustion from days of fighting Marcus Tate and his minions finally pulling her under, but her body ached as she stirred. Her jaw was still tender from Vince's punch at the corner store, her shoulder stiff from Tate's shove, and her bandaged palms itched under the gauze. She rolled out of bed, her bare feet cold against the wood, and shuffled to the kitchen, the faint hum of the city waking beyond her walls. Her uniform duffel sat in the closet, her tire iron cleaned and stashed in a drawer, remnants of survival she'd clung to. She brewed coffee, the rich scent grounding her, believing the worst was behind her. Tate's firing had hit the news hard yesterday, his pawn Vince locked up, confessing to the ambush under pressure. The protests, the dashcam footage, her own. Grit had forced the precinct's hand, and Fort Sheridan was pushing the FBI to hunt him down. She'd won, or so she thought, a third victory carved from blood and defiance. She sipped her coffee, the mug warm in her hands, planning her day. A briefing with Ellis, a call with Tara about the restraining order, a push to seal Tate's fate. The apartment was quiet, the deadbolt secure, her soldier's itch dulled by the promise of justice rolling forward. She didn't hear the faint scrape of boots on the fire escape, didn't see the shadows shifting outside her window. At 5:30, the world exploded. Her front door splintered inward with a deafening crack, wood shards flying as 3 masked men stormed in, black hoods pulled tight over their faces. Layla dropped her mug, ceramic shattering on the floor, coffee splashing her legs as she spun toward the noise. Her heart slammed against her ribs, instincts firing, but they were fast-trained, not random thugs. Tate's supremacist crew, she knew it in a flash, his vengeance breaking into her sanctuary. The leader, Kessler, gaunt and wiry with a tattooed neck, swung a bat at her head. She ducked, the wood whistling past, smashing her coffee pot into a spray of glass and steam. She lunged for the kitchen drawer, fingers grasping for the tire iron, but a second man, stocky with a shaved head, grabbed her arm, wrenching it back. Pain flared through her bruised shoulder. A scream stifled in her throat as she kicked his knee, bone crunching under her heel. He howled, loosening his grip, and she broke free, snatching a knife from the counter. The third, a lanky figure with scarred hands, tackled her from behind, slamming her into the fridge. Her head bounced off the handle, vision blurring, but she twisted, slashing his arm, blood welling through his sleeve. He cursed, stumbling back, and she staggered to her feet. Knife raised, breath ragged. Kessler barked orders, his voice a guttural snarl. "Break her!" The stocky one charged again, bat raised, and Layla dove aside, the swing shattering her kitchen table into splinters. She stabbed at his thigh, the blade sinking deep, and he crumpled, clutching the wound. Kessler swung next, catching her ribs with a sickening thud. Air exploded from her lungs, pain searing white-hot, but she didn't fall. She slashed at his face, missing by inches as he jerked back, then kicked his shin, sending him staggering. The lanky one grabbed her hair, yanking her head back, and she drove her elbow into his gut, breaking free as he doubled over. She fought like a cornered animal, years of combat training surging through her, but they were relentless, 3 against 1, fueled by hate Tate had stoked. Kessler roared, grabbing a can of spray paint from his bag, and scrawled jagged slurs across her walls. "Go back!" And worse, the red paint dripping like blood. The stocky one, bleeding but upright, smashed her TV with his bat, glass exploding. Across the room, Layla lunged at him, knife slashing, but Kessler tackled her from the side, pinning her to the floor. Her ribs screamed, her vision swimming as he drove a fist into her stomach. Then her face, blood bursting from her lip. She clawed at his mask, tearing it half off, revealing a gaunt, pock-marked face, twisted with rage. He snarled, slamming her, head against the wood, stars bursting behind her eyes. The lanky one kicked her side, her breath hitching, and she felt consciousness slipping, her knife skittering across the floor. They trashed her home, overturning furniture, shattering picture frames, her military medals yanked from a display case and pocketed like trophies. Kessler stood over her, panting, as the stocky one sprayed more hate onto her couch, the stench of paint choking the air. "Tate says you're done," Kessler spat, kicking her ribs once more before they bolted, boots pounding out the broken door. Layla lay sprawled amidst the wreckage, blood pooling under her cheek, her body a map of pain. Her apartment was a war zone, walls defaced, furniture smashed, her life violated in a way no ambush could touch. She coughed, tasting copper, and dragged herself to her knees, glass cutting into her palms. Sirens wailed in the distance, faint but growing, neighbors roused by the chaos. She crawled to her phone, smashed but alive, and dialed 911, her voice a broken rasp. "Home invasion. Hyde Park. 3 men. Armed. They're gone." The dispatcher's questions faded as she slumped against the wall, her breath shallow, rage and despair warring in her chest. Cops arrived 10 minutes later, 2 uniforms from Tate's precinct, their faces blank as they stepped over the debris. "Looks like a break-in," one muttered, eyeing the slurs with a shrug. Layla, propped against the couch, blood streaking her face, glared up at them. It was Tate, his crew. They said his name. The second cop, a paunchy man with a mustache, scribbled in his pad, his tone flat. "We'll look into it. Evidence?" She pointed to the walls, the paint still wet, but he smirked faintly. "Could be anyone." Her fists clenched, nails digging into her bandages, but she stayed silent, knowing they'd bury it, Tate's old allies shielding him even now. They took photos, bagged the bat Kessler had dropped, but their questions were cursory, their eyes avoiding hers. "We'll file a report," the paunchy one said, turning to leave. "Stay safe, Mom." The word dripped with mockery, a jab she felt in her bones. Alone again, she staggered to her feet, glass crunching under her socks, and locked the broken door with a chair wedged under the knob. Her medals were gone, her sanctuary defiled, the slurs a knife in her gut. She sank onto the ruined couch, blood dripping onto the cushions, and called Ellis, her voice trembling but firm. "They hit my home. Tate's men, I'm alive but barely." Ellis swore, his voice a growl. "I'm sending a unit, get out of there." She nodded, though he couldn't see, and grabbed her duffel, stuffing essentials inside. Her ribs burned. Her face swelled, but she moved with purpose, a soldier retreating to regroup. She called Tara next, her words clipped. "Home invasion. Tate's escalating. I need you." Tara's gasp was sharp. "I'm coming. Safe house now." Layla hung up, limping to her SUV, the dented metal a mirror to her battered state. She drove to a military safe house in Evanston, 30 minutes north, the city blurring past, her mind a storm of fury and resolve. Tate watched from a dive bar near the warehouse, nursing a whiskey, his phone buzzing with Kessler's update. "She's down, place trashed, got her medals." He grinned, a dark thrill coursing through him. She'd survived Vince, turned his firing into her parade, but this was personal, a gut punch she couldn't dodge. He'd filmed it, Kessler's crew wearing body cams, the footage raw and brutal, her blood staining the floor. He'd leak it soon, twist it to break her spirit, show the world she wasn't untouchable. She'd run to her safe house, her military, thinking she could fight back, but he wasn't done. This was just the start, a taste of the hell he'd rained down. Layla reached the safe house, a nondescript bungalow, and collapsed onto a cot, her body screaming. She'd report this, push harder, believing the law would catch up. But as she stared, at the ceiling the slurs burned into her mind. She knew Tate's hate ran deeper than she'd imagined. A beast she'd have to slay herself. Colonel Layla Simmons lay on a cot in the Evanston safe house, a stark bungalow 30 minutes north of Chicago, her bruised ribs aching with every breath. Dawn's light filtered through cheap blinds, illuminating the wreckage of her body, a swollen jaw from Vince's punch, a split lip and black eye from Kessler's fists, and bandages on her palms stained with fresh blood from the glass in her trashed apartment. Her leather jacket hung torn on a chair, her uniform duffel beside it, the only pieces of her life she'd salvaged from Tate's latest assault. The home invasion had left her battered, her medals stolen, her walls defaced with slurs, but she was alive, fueled by a fury that burned hotter than the pain. She'd called Major Jamal Ellis and Tara Brooks last night, her voice a raw thread, and now she waited, plotting her counterstrike. Ellis arrived at 7, his broad frame filling the doorway, his face a mask of rage as he took in her injuries. "Jesus, Layla," he said, setting a laptop on the table, his voice tight. "They went too far." She sat up, wincing, her split lips stinging as she spoke. "Tate's crew. 3 of them." Said his name. Ellis opened the laptop, pulling up footage from a security camera she'd installed outside her apartment months ago, a precaution she'd never thought she'd need. It showed Kessler's gaunt figure, mask slipping as he kicked her ribs, the stocky one spraying paint, the lanky one smashing her TV. "We've got faces," Ellis said, pausing the video. "Military intel's tracing them now." Layla nodded, her black eye narrowing. "Supremacists. Tate's gone off the grid, but he's funding this." Ellis's fist clenched. "We're hitting back. I've got a unit running their prints, cross-referencing with CPD and FBI databases. They won't hide long." She leaned forward, ignoring the stab in her ribs. "Good. I want them locked up and Tate with them." Ellis met her gaze, his tone firm. "You'll get it. Rest here. We're moving fast." He left, the door clicking shut, and Layla sank back, her mind racing. She'd survived, turned the tables again, and now her unit was closing in. It felt like a win, a 4th notch against Tate's crumbling empire. By noon, the safe house buzzed with activity, 2 MPs stationed outside, Tara arriving with a legal binder and a fierce glare. "You look like hell," she said, dropping the binder on the table. "But we've got them." That footage ties Kessler to a known hate group. CPD's raiding their hangout now. Layla's lips twitched, a grim smile breaking through the pain. "Tate's slipping, he's desperate." Tara nodded, flipping open the binder. "Desperate and stupid. Vince's confession, your dashcam, now this. The FBI's taking over, and the precinct's sweating. They can't bury it anymore." Layla exhaled, relief threading through her exhaustion. "So they're done?" Tara's eyes gleamed. 2 caught already, Kessler and the stocky, 1 nabbed in a warehouse near Calumet. "Lanky's still out there, but they'll roll on Tate to save their skins." Layla's chest swelled, the tide turning again. She'd taken hits, lost her home, but her evidence was a sledgehammer, smashing Tate's network. The TV in the corner flickered to life, a news anchor's voice cutting through. "Breaking news. Chicago PD arrests 2 in a brutal home invasion, targeting a U.S. Army colonel. Leaked footage shows the attack, sparking outrage." Layla watched, her swollen jaw tightening as the video aired, her bloodied face blurring into a crowd chanting her name outside the precinct. The footage backfired on Tate, the public erupting in her favor. Protests swelled, hundreds marching with signs reading, "Protect the Colonel." Their voices a roar she could hear even from Evanston. Social media lit up, hashtags trending, her name a rallying cry against corruption and hate. Tara grinned, scrolling her phone. "You're a symbol now, Layla. They're demanding Tate's head." Layla stood, testing her ribs, the pain sharp but bearable. "Let them. I'm testifying tomorrow. End this." Tara nodded, gathering her papers. "Heal up. You've got the world behind you." Layla locked the door behind her, sinking onto the cot, a fragile hope blooming. The arrests, the outrage, the FBI's weight. It felt like victory, a 4th win snatched from Tate's jaws. She spent the afternoon training in the safe house's cramped basement, shadowboxing with a makeshift bag, her bruised body protesting, but her spirit fierce. She'd face the FBI tomorrow, testify against Kessler and his crew, tie them to Tate with every scrap of evidence. Her medals were gone, her apartment a ruin, but she'd rebuild, stronger. The TV droned upstairs, pundits praising her resilience, the military issuing a statement of support. She paused, sweat beading on her brow, believing the storm had peaked. that Tate's reign was crumbling under the weight of her fight. She showered, the hot water easing her aches, and slept, the safe house quiet, her soldier's itch muted by the promise of justice. But 30 miles south, Marcus Tate hunched in a dingy motel room near the Indiana border, the air stale with mold and whiskey. His world had imploded, Kessler and his stocky lackey nabbed, the lanky one missing, his firing cemented, the FBI on his trail. He'd watched the news, Layla's bloodied face plastered everywhere, the protests a knife in his gut. His plan had flipped, her survival a spotlight on his hate, but he wasn't broken. He swigged from a bottle, his hands steady, rage a furnace in his chest. She'd turned his invasion into her crusade, made him a hunted man. But he had one card left, a bomb to drop when she least expected it. He pulled a laptop from a duffel, the body cam footage from Kessler's crew loaded and ready. Hours of raw brutality. Layla's fight edited down to her slashes, her kicks, twisted to paint her as a savage, a radical striking first. He'd leak it online, flood the dark corners of the web, let his supremacist allies spin it into a lie, the colonel attacking innocent patriots, not the other way around. He smirked, uploading it to an encrypted server, his fingers dancing over the keys. She'd feel safe now, healing in her bunker, thinking the FBI would cage him. He'd let her bask, then blow it all apart. The footage was his revenge, a grenade to shred her hero's halo. Layla woke at dusk, her ribs less tender, her black eye fading to a dull purple. She ate a cold sandwich, the safe house's fridge bare, and checked her phone. Ellis texted, "Raid successful, Kessler's singing, Tate's next." Tara followed. "FBI's got your back. Testify tomorrow, 9 a.m. She stood, stretching, the protests still echoing on the TV, her name a chant of victory. She trained again, her punches sharper, her mind clear. She'd survived the invasion, turned it into a weapon, and now the law was closing in. She locked the safe house tight, believing she'd won, that Tate's empire was dust. But as she slept, a faint rumble shook the street outside unnoticed, a harbinger of the chaos he'd unleash. Tate finished his upload, the motel room dark, the whiskey bottle empty. He'd lost Kessler, his badge, his freedom looming, but this would sting worse than any arrest. She'd wake to a world turned against her victory a lie, her bloodied face a meme for his cause. He leaned back, eyes glinting, the footage a ticking bomb. She'd report, testify, thinking she'd sealed his fate, but he'd hit her harder, twist the knife deeper. He dialed a contact, voice low. "Spread it tonight. Make it viral." The line hummed with malice, a storm she'd never outrun. Did Layla's comeback blow your mind? Drop a 1 in the comments if you think she's turned the tables for good, or a 2 if Tate's still got a trick up his sleeve. Smash that like button if you're stunned by her grit, and subscribe to see this war explode. Will her testimony bury Tate once and for all, or is there a darker twist waiting to unravel everything she's fought for? The Evanston safe house was a tomb of silence as Colonel Layla Simmons woke at 6. The cot creaking under her bruised frame. Her ribs ached less today, the swelling in her jaw easing to a dull throb, her black eye a fading shadow. She'd slept fitfully, the protests chanting her name a distant echo in her dreams, but her soldier's resolve burned bright. Yesterday's raid had nabbed Kessler and his stocky accomplice, their confessions tying Marcus Tate to the home invasion, and the FBI was closing in. She'd testify at 9, seal his fate with her footage, her words, her bloodied survival. She rose, splashing cold water on her face, the cracked mirror reflecting a warrior, not a victim. Her uniform duffel sat packed, her torn leather jacket slung over a chair ready for the fight ahead. She brewed coffee, the safe house's stale air warming with the scent, and checked her phone. Ellis had texted, "FBI's got Kessler on tape." "Tate's cornered," Tara followed. "Meet me at the Federal Building, we're ending this." Layla nodded to herself, sipping the bitter brew, her fourth win solidifying. The TV flickered on, a morning anchor praising her, Colonel Simmons, a beacon of justice, the protests still raging in her favor. She dressed, pulling on a fresh blazer, her military ID clipped to her belt, and stepped outside. the MPs nodding as she climbed into her dented SUV. The drive to Chicago was a quiet 30 minutes, Lake Michigan glinting under a pale sun, her mind sharp, believing the tide had turned for good. But as she merged onto Lakeshore Drive, her phone buzzed with a news alert, the headline, "A Gut Punch." Shocking video. Colonel Simmons attacks civilians. She swerved slightly, pulling onto the shoulder, her pulse spiking as she opened the link. The screen filled with grainy footage, her home invasion twisted into a lie. It showed her slashing Kessler with a knife, kicking the stocky one, her face bloodied but fierce, edited to cut their attack, their slurs, their bats. A voiceover droned. New evidence suggests the decorated colonel provoked a violent clash, raising questions about her heroism. Layla's breath caught, her hands trembling on the wheel. Tate. He'd leaked doctored body cam footage, flipped the narrative, made her the aggressor. She scrolled, her stomach twisting as online forums erupted, Tate's supremacist allies flooding, the web with the lie. "Radical colonel assaults patriots," one post screamed, racking up thousands of shares. "She's no hero, just another thug," another spat, the comments a sewer of hate. Her name, her face, her bloodied fight warped into a weapon against her. She slammed the phone down, fury boiling over, but dread sank in. This wasn't just revenge, it was a public execution of her reputation, a fifth blow she hadn't seen coming. She dialed Tara, her voice tight. "He's leaked fake footage." "I'm the villain now," Tara swore, sharp and loud. "I'm on it, get here fast." Layla floored the gas, weaving through traffic, the federal building looming as she parked. Tara met her outside, her navy suit crisp, her face grim. "It's viral," she said, pulling Layla inside. "But the FBI's got the real tape. We'll counter it." Layla nodded, her split lip stinging as she clenched her jaw. "He's desperate. Thinks this'll save him." Tara's eyes hardened. "It won't. Testify and we'll bury him." They strode into the hearing room, agents and lawyers buzzing, the air thick with tension. Layla took the stand, her blazer straight, her voice steady as she recounted the invasion, the ambush, Tate's war. The real footage played, Kessler's slurs echoing, her defense clear. But the damage was done outside these walls. By noon, she left the building, the FBI promising arrests, her testimony a hammer against Tate's crumbling lies. But as she drove back to Evanston, the radio crackled with a new horror. Crowds gather at a military safe house, outraged by leaked footage of Colonel Simmons. Her gut sank, her hands tightening on the wheel. She sped up, the bungalow street coming into view, and saw them, a mob of 50, maybe 60, faces twisted with rage, signs scrawled with traitor and liar. They'd tracked her, Tate's liar beacon, his allies stoking the fire, online. She parked a block away, watching as they hurled rocks at the windows, glass shattering in sharp bursts. Layla slipped out, her breath shallow, her soldier's mind mapping an escape. The MPs were gone, overwhelmed or recalled, leaving her exposed. A bottle sailed past her head, smashing against her SUV, and the mob roared, spotting her. "There." "She is!" a man bellowed, his beard flecked with spit, eyes wild. They surged, a wave of hate crashing toward her, fists raised, makeshift weapons glinting. She bolted for the back alley, her ribs screaming, her boots pounding the pavement as they gave chase. A brick grazed her shoulder, pain flaring, but she didn't stop, ducking through a fence, her lungs burning. She reached a rear window, smashing it with her elbow, glass cutting fresh lines into her bandaged hands. She climbed inside, the safe house dark, the mob's shouts echoing as they circled. They torched her SUV, flames licking the dented metal, the crackle drowning out their chants. Layla grabbed her duffel, her torn jacket, and barricaded the door with a table, her heart hammering. She dialed Ellis, her voice a rasp. "Mob's here, they've burned my car, Tate's footage did this." Ellis swore, loud and raw. "Hold tight, units en route." She hung up, peering through the blinds, the fire's glow painting the street red, her sanctuary lost again. She'd escaped, barely, but her world was ashes. Tate's lie a match to her life. The MPs arrived 20 minutes later, sirens blaring, scattering the mob like roaches. They arrested 5, the rest fleeing into the dusk, their signs smouldering. In the wreckage, Layla stepped out, her blazer singed, her hands bleeding anew, the FBI pulling up behind. An agent, a tall woman with a clipped voice, approached. "We've got the leaders. Your testimony's clearing you, Colonel. This was orchestrated." Layla nodded, her split lip curling. "Tate, he's still free." The agent's jaw tightened. "Not for long. We're tracing the leak." Layla watched her SUV burn, the last of her belongings gone, believing she'd reclaim her name and this nightmare. But Tate sat in his motel room near the Indiana border, whiskey bottle half empty, a grin splitting his face as he scrolled the chaos online. The mob had hit her hard, torched her ride, turned her hero's crown into a target. His doctored footage had worked, a lie so loud it drowned her truth, at least for now. He'd lost Kessler, his badge, his freedom teetering, but this was a win, a knife in her gut. He'd bribed a dirty Fed agent, Holt, to stall the investigation, feeding him cash to bury leads. Holt's text buzzed. "FBI's slowed. You're..." "Clear for now." Tate laughed, a harsh rasp, the bottle clinking as he poured more. He'd planned this twist, knowing the mob would bite, his supremacist network amplifying the lie. She'd run to her safe house, her testimony, thinking she could outlast him. But he'd shattered her peace again. He leaned back, the motel's mildew stench mixing with whiskey, his eyes glinting. She'd survived, sure, but she was homeless, hunted, her name mud. He'd hit her harder next, use Holt to keep the FBI off his back, make her bleed for every defiance. This was his game now, and he'd play it to the end. Layla stood amidst the wreckage, the MPs guarding her, the FBI promising justice. She'd escaped the mob, cleared her name with the feds, but the loss sank deep. Her SUV a charred husk, her safe house breached. She'd thought exposing Tate's lie would end it, bring her peace, but his reach stretched further. His hate a hydra she couldn't kill. She gripped her duffel, her torn jacket, and climbed into an MP's car, heading to a new safe house, her mind a storm. Tate was free, plotting, and she was running out of ground to stand on. Colonel Layla Simmons sat in a new safe house, a nondescript apartment in Rogers Park. Chicago's northern edge, the hum of Lake Michigan faint through the sealed windows. Her ribs ached under a fresh bandage, her black eye a dull purple, her split lip scabbed over from the home invasion 3 days ago. Her hands, rewrapped after the mob's glass shards cut them anew, gripped a cold coffee mug, her torn leather jacket slung over a chair, her uniform duffel the last tether to her old life. The mob had torched her SUV, Tate's doctored footage, turning her into a pariah, but she'd survived, testified, and now the FBI was closing in. She'd moved here last night, the MPs guarding her, believing she could reclaim her ground. Her phone buzzed, Major Jamal Ellis's name flashing. She answered, her voice hoarse but steady. "Jamal, what's up?" His tone was electric, a rare edge of triumph. "Layla, we got him. FBI stung Tate this morning, caught him in a motel near Indiana. Live TV, cuffs and all." Layla's chest swelled, a fifth wind breaking through the haze. "He's done?" Ellis laughed, sharp and raw. "Locked up tight. Kessler's confession, your footage, the mob arrests, it piled up. Grand jury's indicting him for terrorism now." She stood, pacing the cramped room, her ribs protesting but her spirit soaring. "Finally," she breathed, the weight lifting. If only for a moment. She turned on the TV, the screen flaring with a news chopper's feed. Marcus Tate, unshaven and wild-eyed, shoved into a black SUV, cuffs glinting as cameras swarmed. The anchor's voice cut through. "Disgraced officer Marcus Tate arrested today, linked to a hate group targeting Colonel Layla Simmons, a decorated U.S. Army officer." Layla's lips twitched, a grim smile cracking her scabbed lip. "Tara," called next, her voice a whip of satisfaction. "He's indicted, Layla. Assault, conspiracy, terrorism. You nailed him on that stand." Layla sank onto the couch, the cheap fabric scratching her back. "And the Fed mole?" Tara's tone hardened. "Caught too. Agent Holt bribed to stall. FBI's cleaning house." Layla exhaled, the pieces falling into place. She'd testified yesterday, her real footage dismantling Tate's lie, the mob's leaders confessing to his orders. The public had flipped. Again, protests shifting to justice for Simmons, her name cleared on air. She'd been given this new safe house, a sterile box with barred windows, and now Tate was caged, his empire dust. Crowds cheered her outside the federal building. News vans camping out, her face a symbol again, this time untainted. She rubbed her bandaged hands, the pain a dull echo, believing it was over. "He's really gone," she told Tara, her voice firm. "I'm coming back tomorrow. Fort Sheridan needs me." Tara paused. "Rest first. You've earned it." She hung up, the TV looping Tate's arrest, his glare burning through the screen. She muted it, the silence thick, her soldier's itch quiet for the first time in weeks. She'd won 5 times, each victory harder, bloodier, but this felt final, his cuffs a lock on her nightmare. She showered, the hot water soothing her bruises, and dressed in a fresh t-shirt, her uniform duffel unpacked, her medals lost, but her rank intact. She ate a cold sandwich, the safe house's fridge stocked by the MPs, and planned her return. Brief Ellis, rebuild her life, bury Tate for good. She locked the door, the deadbolt clicking, and slept. The city's hum a lullaby, her 5th win. A shield she trusted. But 30 miles away, Tate sat in a holding cell at the federal lockup, his wrists raw from the cuffs, his unshaven jaw clenched tight. The arrest had been a circus, cameras flashing, agents rough as they hauled him from the motel, his whiskey bottle shattering on the floor. He'd lost Kessler, Holt, his freedom, all because of Layla Simmons, her testimony a noose around his neck. His motel room was evidence now, his laptop seized, but he'd planned for this, a final card stashed where they'd never look. He smirked, a dark gleam in his eyes, the cell's concrete cold against his back. She'd think him beaten, locked, away, but he'd strike one last time, cut her deeper than any mob could. He'd activated a sleeper cell in his hate group 2 days ago, a trio of fanatics loyal to his cash, not his badge. They'd waited silent, while the FBI chased him, their target locked. Layla's sister, Maya Simmons, a 35-year-old nurse in Oak Park. Tate had tracked her months back, a backup plan he'd kept from Kessler, a knife to twist when all else failed. He'd slipped a burner phone to a guard he'd bribed, a lifer named Rico with no love for the feds. Rico dialed now, Tate's voice low through the bars. "Take her, send the video, make it hurt." Rico grunted, the line, "Dead." The plan rolling as Tate leaned back, his grin a jagged scar. Maya was locking up her clinic at dusk, her scrubs wrinkled after a double shift, her brown eyes tired but warm. She texted Layla yesterday, "Proud of you, sis, stay safe," unaware of the mob, the footage, the war spilling over. A van idled across the street, unmarked, its windows black. As she stepped into the parking lot, 3 men in hoods sprang out, fast and silent. She screamed, dropping her keys, but a gloved hand clamped over her mouth, a rag soaked in chloroform, pressed to her face. She thrashed, nails clawing, but her limbs went limp, her body sagging as they dragged her inside, the van peeling away into the twilight. Layla woke at 8, the safe house dim, a faint chill seeping through the walls. She stretched, her ribs tender but healing, and checked her phone, expecting Ellis's update. Instead, a video file pinged. No sender, just a blank number. She opened it, her breath catching as Maya's face filled the screen, gagged and bound, her eyes wide with terror. A hooded figure loomed behind her, a knife at her throat, his voice distorted but dripping with Tate's venom. "You thought you won, Colonel. Surrender yourself or she's dead by midnight." The screen cut to black, Maya's muffled sob echoing in Layla's skull, a sledgehammer to her 5th win. She dropped the phone, her hands shaking, rage and fear crashing together. Tate, from his cell, had struck her heart, her sister, a pawn, in his endgame. She replayed the video, memorizing every detail, the concrete wall, the faint hum of traffic, clues to find her. She called Ellis, her voice a broken blade. "They've got Maya. Tate's cell did this." Ellis swore, loud and... "I'm mobilizing a team, send me the file." She forwarded it, pacing the room, her mind racing. She'd thought his arrest was the end, her testimony a lock, but he'd turned her victory to ash, his hate reaching beyond bars. Tara called, her voice sharp with panic. "Layla, what's happening?" Layla's words tumbled out, clipped, and Hard. Maya's kidnapped. Tate's orders. I'm finding her. Tara gasped. Evity. FBI's on it. Don't move alone. But Layla hung up, grabbing her duffel, her torn jacket, her soldier's instincts overriding caution. She'd won. 5 times forced Tate's arrest, cleared her name, but this was personal. A line he'd crossed she couldn't forgive. The MPs knocked, their faces grim. Colonel, we're securing you, Ellis's orders. She shook her head, her eyes blazing. I'm not hiding. She's my sister. Tate sat in his cell, the guard slipping the burner back, a smirk playing on his lips. The video was out, Layla reeling, her precious win a hollow shell. He'd lost his freedom, his allies, but this was checkmate, her surrender or her sister's blood. He'd bribed Rico with his last cash stash, $1,000, hidden in the motel, enough to spark this fire. She'd run to save Maya, expose herself, and his cell would finish her. A final blow from behind bars. He leaned against the wall, the concrete cool, his rage a live wire. She'd never see it coming. Layla stood in the safe house, the MPs blocking the door. But her mind was already mapping Oak Park, the clinic, the van's likely path. She'd find Maya, end this, even if it cost her everything. Tate was caged, but his hate wasn't, and she'd face it head-on. Her 5th win a mirage. She'd shatter to save her blood. Colonel Layla Simmons stood in the Rogers Park safe house, her bruised ribs screaming under the bandage, her black eye a fading bruise, her split lip cracked anew as she clenched her jaw. The video of her sister Maya, gagged and bound with a knife at her throat, looped in her mind. Marcus Tate's distorted voice taunting from his cell, "Surrender or she's dead by midnight." Her torn leather jacket hung on a chair, her uniform duffel packed, her hands trembling with rage and resolve. The MPs blocked the door, their faces stern, Ellis's orders to secure her ringing in their ears, but she wouldn't wait. Tate had taken her sister, his hate striking from behind bars, and she'd end it herself. She slipped a folding knife from her duffel into her boot, its weight a quiet promise, and faced the MPs. "I'm going," she said, her voice steel, eyes blazing. The taller one, a sergeant with a buzz cut, stepped forward. "Colonel, we can't let you. Major's team is tracking the video." Layla's lip curled, blood flecking her chin. "My sister's dying. Move." He hesitated, then stepped aside, his partner following, their silence a grudging assent. She grabbed a burner phone Ellis had left, texting him the video's audio cues. Concrete walls, traffic hum, a faint train whistle. "Find this," she typed, then bolted out, the night air cold against her battered skin. She hotwired an MP's, jeep parked outside, the engine roaring to life as she peeled into the dark, heading west toward Oak Park. Her mind raced, mapping the clinic where Maya was last seen, the van's likely route. The video's background screamed industrial, a warehouse district near the rail lines, and she knew the area from patrols, abandoned factories off Cicero Avenue. She floored it, the jeep's tires chewing asphalt, rain starting to fall in heavy sheets, blurring the windshield. Her ribs ached, her hands bled through the bandages, but she pushed past it. A soldier on a mission, Tate's 5th blow, a call she'd answer with blood. 40 minutes later, she hit Cicero, the rain pounding, the jeep skidding as she slowed near a row of derelict warehouses. One stood out, its windows boarded, a faint light flickering inside. The van from Maya's clinic parked crooked by a loading dock. Layla killed the engine, stepping into the downpour, her boots splashing in puddles. The knife in her boot, a cold comfort. She crept closer, rain soaking her blazer, her breath misting as she peered through a cracked board. Inside, 3 hooded men paced a concrete room, Maya tied to a chair, her head slumped, alive but dazed. Layla's heart pounded, fury a live wire, and she moved silent as a shadow. She found a rusted side door, prying it open with a shard of metal, the screech drowned by the storm. The warehouse stank of oil and rot, its cavernous space echoing, with the men's low voices. "Tate says midnight," one grunted, a squat figure with a pistol. "She shows, we kill 'em both." Layla slipped behind a stack of crates, her training kicking in, years of urban combat guiding her steps. She counted them. Squat, a lanky one with a shotgun, and a wiry one sharpening a blade. 3 against 1, but she'd faced worse odds in Fallujah. She edged closer, the knife sliding from her boot into her hand, her breath steady despite the pain. Squat turned, his back to her, and she struck, lunging low to slash his Achilles tendon. He screamed, collapsing, the pistol clattering as blood, pulled on the concrete. Lanky spun, shotgun raised, but she rolled behind a crate, the blast splintering wood above her head. She sprang up, hurling the knife at his chest, the blade sinking deep. He gasped, dropping the gun, and she charged, tackling him to the ground, her fist smashing his nose with a wet crunch. Wiry roared, blade flashing, and she dodged, his swing grazing her arm, blood welling through her sleeve. She grabbed Squat's pistol, firing twice, the bullets tearing through Wiry's shoulder and thigh, sending him sprawling. Maya stirred, her muffled cries piercing the chaos, and Layla ripped the gag free, cutting her bonds with Wiry's dropped. "Blade! Layla!" Maya croaked, her eyes wide, tears mixing with rain seeping through the roof. "I've got you," Layla said, hauling her up, her sister's weight heavy against her battered frame. The men groaned, alive but down, and Layla dragged Maya to the jeep, the rain a curtain as they stumbled out. She floored it, tires spinning in mud, the warehouse shrinking in the rear view, believing she'd won, saved her blood from Tate's claws. But a speaker crackled behind them, Tate's voice booming from a hidden mic in the room. "You think this ends it, Colonel?" Her gut sank, the jeep skidding as she hit the highway, rain lashing the windshield. Tate's escape hit her like a brick, his voice a taunt from beyond the cell she'd thought held him. He'd bribed a guard, slipped free, and this was his trap, luring her out. She glanced at Maya, shivering in the passenger seat, and pushed the jeep harder, heading south toward Fort Sheridan. The rain thickened, visibility dropping, and headlights flared behind her, a patrol car surging through the storm. Tate's silhouette loomed in the driver's seat, his grin a flash of teeth as he rammed her bumper, the jeep lurching forward. Lila swerved, tires squealing, Maya screaming as the car hit again, metal grinding. "Hold on!" Layla shouted, cutting the wheel, but Tate matched her, his car slamming her side, forcing her toward the shoulder. The jeep fishtailed, rain blinding her, and he rammed once more, the impact sending them spinning into a ditch. Mud sprayed, the jeep tilting, and Layla kicked the door open, dragging Maya out as Tate's car screeched to a stop. He emerged, soaked and wild, a gun in one hand, cuffs in the other, his laugh a jagged edge. "You're mine now," he snarled, advancing through the downpour, rain streaking his face. She shoved Maya behind her, the folding knife slipping from her boot into her palm, her ribs a furnace of pain. Tate lunged, gun raised, but she ducked, slashing his wrist, the gun flying into the mud. He roared, swinging the cuffs, catching her jaw with a crack that split her lip anew. Blood filled her mouth, but she twisted, cutting his thigh, his scream lost in the storm. He stumbled and she tackled him, pinning his arms, the knife at his throat. "It's over," she spat, rain mixing with blood on her face, her strength waning but unyielding. He thrashed, but she held, disarming him, his cuffs snapping onto his wrists with a wet click. Sirens wailed, red and blue cutting through the rain, MPs and feds swarming from the highway. Tate glared up at her, cuffed and beaten, his eyes burning, with hate as she staggered back, Maya clinging to her. An MP fired, a bullet grazing her arm, blood blooming through her sleeve, and she fell to her knees, pain crashing over her. Tate laughed, a broken sound as feds hauled him up, his allies shooting wildly, one hitting her shoulder before they were gunned down. She slumped, rain pooling around her, Maya sobbing, believing she'd lost as Tate was dragged away, his escape, a fleeting triumph now crushed. Ellis arrived, his face ashen as he knelt beside her, medics rushing in. "How you got him?" he said, his voice thick, rain dripping from his cap. Layla nodded, blood soaking her blazer, her knife still in hand. She'd saved Maya, fought Tate in the mud, but her body betrayed her. The fifth win a hollow shell as bullets tore through her. Tate's cuffs gleamed, his glare fading into the storm, his cell waiting again. She'd ended his trap, but at a cost, her strength bleeding out as medics lifted her, the rain a cold shroud over her victory. Colonel Layla Simmons lay in a sterile hospital bed at Northwestern Memorial, the antiseptic smell sharp in her nose, her body a tapestry of pain. Rain still drummed against the window, a relentless echo of the night before when she'd fought. Marcus Tate in the mud, saved her sister Maya and taken bullets to her arm and shoulder. Her ribs, bruised from the home invasion, throbbed under tight bandages, her black eye a dull purple, her split lip crusted with blood. Tubes snaked from her arm, dripping fluids, and a monitor beeped steadily beside her, a lifeline she barely felt. Maya sat nearby, her face pale, her nurse's hands trembling as she clutched Layla's duffel, the torn leather jacket draped over it like a shroud. The MPs had dragged Tate away, cuffed and beaten, his escape thwarted. But Layla's victory bled out with every pulse, her fifth win a fragile thread. Major Jamal Ellis stood at the foot of her bed, his broad frame tense, his cap crumpled in. His hands. "You're a damn hero, Layla," he said, voice thick with relief and fury. "Tate's back in lockup, maximum security this time. No bribed guards, no outs." She nodded, her swollen jaw aching, blood staining her teeth as she spoke. "Maya's safe?" Ellis glanced at her sister, nodding. "Yeah. Medics cleared her. Shaken but alive, thanks to you." Maya's eyes welled, her voice a whisper. "I thought I'd lose you." Layla reached for her hand, wincing as the bullet wound in her shoulder flared, her grip weak but firm. "Not yet," she rasped, the knife she'd used on Tate still, vivid in her mind, its weight a ghost in her palm. FBI agent Torres, the tall woman who'd led the mob arrests, stepped in, her clipped voice cutting through the haze. "Colonel, we've got him cold. Kidnapping, terrorism, assault, the works. Grand jury's fast-tracking it. He's done." Layla's lips twitched, a grim flicker of triumph, but her eyes stayed hard, Tate's taunt from the warehouse speaker echoing, "You think this ends it?" She'd saved Maya, cuffed him in the rain, but the bullets, the blood, the chaos left her broken, her strength leaking onto the hospital sheets. "He's not done," she said, voice low, her soldier's itch flaring despite the drugs dulling. "Her senses." Torres frowned. "He's locked up, no reach left." Layla shook her head, pain spiking. "He'll find a way." Ellis clenched his fists, rain streaking the window behind him. "Not this time. We're burying him. Pentagon's pushing for a full court-martial if he's got any military ties left to strip." Layla sank back, the pillow cold against her neck, her mind churning. She'd won 5 times, each victory a war, but Tate's hate was a hydra, regrowing heads she couldn't sever. The mob, the invasion, Maya's kidnapping, his escape. Every blow had escalated, and now she lay here, shot and shattered, her sister traumatized, her life in ruins. She'd thought his arrest was the end, the cuffs a lock, but her gut screamed, otherwise a warning she couldn't ignore. Torres pulled a tablet from her bag, swiping to a report. "His cell's under guard, no contact. The sleeper crew's dead or caught. We're tracing his last moves, but he's out of plays." Layla's eyes narrowed, blood crusting her lip as she spoke. "Check the guard. Rico. He's dirty." Torres nodded, typing a note. "On it, rest, Colonel, we'll handle him." She left, her heels clicking out, and Ellis followed, promising to return. Maya stayed, her hands wringing, the safe house a memory neither could reclaim. Layla stared. At the ceiling, the beep of the monitor a metronome to her thoughts, her 5th win a hollow shell. She'd saved Maya, beaten Tate in the mud, but the cost was etched in her flesh, her soul scarred by his relentless hate. Hours dragged, the rain a steady roar, her body sinking into the bed as painkillers dulled the edges. Nurses came and went, adjusting tubes, checking wounds, their voices a murmur she barely heard. Maya slept in the chair, her breathing soft, a lifeline Layla clung to. She'd report to Fort Sheridan when she could stand, rebuild her life. But Tate's shadow loomed, his escape a wound that wouldn't heal. She'd trusted the system 5 times, leaned on Ellis, Tara, the FBI, and each time he'd struck back, harder, crueler, his racism a cancer she couldn't kill. Her fingers flexed, itching for the knife, her mind racing despite the fog. She couldn't wait, couldn't trust the feds to end him. He'd find a crack, a guard, a loophole, and she'd bleed again. By noon her strength flickered, enough to sit up, her shoulder screaming as she pulled the IV loose, blood dripping onto the sheet. Maya stirred, gasping, "Layla, stop!" But Layla swung her legs over, her boots on the floor, the folding knife from her duffel in her hand. "He's not done," she said, voice a rasp, her eyes blazing. "I am." Maya grabbed her arm, tears spilling. "You're shot. Let them handle it." Layla shook her off, her blazer stained and torn as she dressed, the knife slipping into her boot. "They can't. He'll keep coming." She staggered to the door, paying a white-hot lance, but her soldier's will drove her, Tate's taunt a drumbeat in her skull. She slipped past the nurse's station, the hospital a maze of white. Walls and beeping machines, her breath shallow but steady. An MP guarded the exit, his back to her, and she ducked into a stairwell, descending slow, her ribs grinding with each step. Outside, rain soaked her instantly, the city a grey blur as she flagged a cab, her voice firm despite the tremble. "Indiana border, fast!" The driver glanced at her bloodied state, hesitating. But her glare silenced him, and he peeled out, the meter ticking as she leaned back, her mind a storm of plans. She'd end Tate, not with testimony, not with cuffs, but with a blade, a final cut he couldn't dodge. The cab dropped her near the motel where Tate had been caught, a rundown dive off I-94, its neon sign flickering in the downpour. She paid with crumpled bills from her duffel, limping into the lot, rain masking her steps. She knew he was locked up, but his network lingered, and she'd use it. She'd tracked a rival hate group months ago, a splinter faction Tate had clashed. With their leader Boone, a hulking ex-con with a grudge. She'd leaked intel on them to Ellis once, but now she'd turned them, a weapon Tate wouldn't see coming. She found a payphone, its booth cracked, and dialed a number she'd memorized, her voice low, disguised. "Boone, it's a tip. Tate's snitching to the feds. Motel 6, room 12, tonight." She hung up, rain dripping from her hair, her breath misting as she retreated to an alley, watching the motel. Hours passed, her body screaming, blood seeping through her bandages. But she held, a soldier in ambush. At 10, a rusted van rolled in, 4 men spilling out, Boone's bulk unmistakable, his shaved head gleaming wet. They kicked in room 12's door, expecting Tate, finding it empty, but Layla had planted the seed. She'd hacked a burner phone, from the safe house spoofing Tate's number, texting Boone earlier, "Ratting you out, feds know your stash." It was a lie, but Boone bit, his crew raging as they trashed the room, screaming for blood. Layla limped to a gas station, her blazer soaked red, and used their Wi-Fi to leak the tip wider. Dark web forums buzzing with "Tate's a snitch." She knew Boone's crew tracked him, knew his cell's location from Ellis's updates. She'd set the trap. Her 5th win a mirage she'd shatter with cunning, not guns. By midnight, the rain eased, and she hitched back to Chicago, her body failing, collapsing into a diner's booth, the waitress eyeing her wounds but serving coffee silently. Her phone buzzed, Ellis's voice frantic. "Layla, where are you?" "Tate's dead." She froze, mug halfway to her lips, her pulse spiking. "What?" Ellis's words tumbled out, raw and stunned. Hate group hit the lockup, Boone's crew, slipped past guards, beat him to death in his cell. Live-streamed it. "He's gone, Layla." She set the mug down, her hands steady, blood crusting her fingers. The footage flashed online, Tate's screams a garbled howl as Boone's fists rained. Down, his face pulp, the cell a slaughterhouse. She'd leaked the intel, framed him as a rat, turned his own kind against him, a reversal he'd never foresee. "Good," she said, voice flat, hanging up as Ellis swore, demanding answers she wouldn't give. She stumbled out, rain gone, the city quiet, her body a wreck, but her mind clear. The Pentagon called hours later, Ellis relaying their orders. "For that, burying it. No investigation. Promoting you to general for resilience." She accepted, stone-faced, the diner's neon flickering as she sat, coffee cold. Tate was dead. A brutal end she'd engineered. Justice traded for vengeance, her soul a jagged edge. She'd saved Maya, ended him. But the cost was her, the colonel who'd bent the world to break him. The hospital loomed as she limped back. Medics rushing her in, Maya sobbing as they stitched her up, her triumph a haunting shadow. Tate's death shocked all, Boone's crew arrested. The live stream a viral scar no one could unsee. Layla watched from her bed, her shoulder sewn, her arm slung, the promotion a weight she didn't want. She'd flipped the game, used hate, to kill hate and won. But the mirror showed a stranger. Her eyes hollow, her medals lost, her sister safe but scarred. The Pentagon hushed it, her cunning a secret, and she stood at the window, rain gone, Chicago sprawling below, knowing she'd traded her soul to end his war, unbroken but forever changed. The story of Colonel Layla Simmons offers profound lessons in resilience, justice, and the cost of vengeance. First, it underscores the power of standing firm against systemic racism, as Layla's unwavering resolve turned every racist assault into a weapon against her oppressor. Marcus Tate. Her military discipline and intelligence highlight how preparation and courage can defy even the most entrenched prejudice, proving that strength isn't just physical, but mental and moral. Second, it reveals the fragility of institutional trust. Despite her rank and evidence, the system repeatedly failed her, forcing her to take justice into her own hands. This exposes the deep flaws in structures meant to protect, especially for those targeted by racial hate. Third, the escalating war with Tate teaches that unchecked racism festers into violence, a cycle that demands confrontation, not avoidance. Layla's victories, though hard-won, came at a steep price. Her home, her sister's safety, her own body, showing that fighting injustice often leaves scars. Finally, the shocking twist of Tate's death at her orchestration blurs the line between justice and revenge, raising a haunting question. When does the pursuit of right become its own wrong? Layla's transformation from victim to victor, to vengeful architect warns of the toll such battles exact, leaving her unbroken but forever changed. Her story is a call to resist, to endure, but also to reflect on where the fight leads us. What do you think? Did Layla's final move cross a line, or was it the only way to end Tate's terror? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like if her grit moved you, and subscribe for more tales of defiance. Share this if you believe in standing up to hate. Thanks for joining this journey. Stay strong, stay just, and see you in the next story.